Rangers Journal Night. Good evening, everyone, to Wednesday's edition of the Rangers Journal. I'm your host, Jock, and tonight we're going to be doing a deep dive into our new signing today, Joe Rothwell. I'm going to introduce two of our panelists at the moment. I'm still waiting on one more. Craig, this is your debut. How are you, Craig? You nervous?
Very well, Jock. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure to have you, Craig. Pleasure to have you. And Ross, just back from Turkey. No new haircut, no new teeth because it's not needed.
No. I did put a joke procedure that I had on the WhatsApp group, but probably not PC enough for this audience. But look, had a good time. Yeah, it was nice to get a bit of summer sun. I think the weather was pretty good here as well. So hope you lads are well as well.
I'm great. Rangers are signing players, and we're edging closer to these pre-season games, which we're all itching to see how we're going to do, and
Definitely.
hopefully put the TNS stuff to bed, I think. So we'll dive straight into it then. Joe Rothwell, don't really knew much about it. I said it broke yesterday early afternoon. There was chat that they were in discussions with Bournemouth. Next thing, Sky broke the news that the fee was agreed, and next thing you know, he's basically up the road and he's got the scarf picture done in probably about 24 hours, which in terms of Rangers transfers over the last couple of years, it's unheard of, something like that. Craig, just your initial thoughts on the signing?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say about it, Jock, was actually I did that pod about the sort of Leeds United and the 49ers and stuff on Tuesday night. And at that stage, there wasn't even a hint of this going ahead at all. It was the next morning when I saw it was actually the first tweet that I saw was from Graham Smith from the Yorkshire Evening Post, who's a good banger in Northern Ireland man as well, actually. And he broke the news. And my first reaction was, that is absolutely fantastic. You know, that is great. If that comes off, we've got a good one here. Obviously had the chance to watch him a hell of a lot last year. He was one of those who the hell's he signings that they made at the start, which, you know, we're all going to get these and what have you. Nobody really knew who he was. They just got rid of some big names for a lot of money. And he was a very underwhelming replacement. It took him a wee while to get into the team. It was Ethan Ampadu and Gruev, the Bulgarian international, who Farka sort of set as a kind of wall in front of the back four before, but both got injured. Ampadu against Coventry, and then the next game away at Norwich, Gruev picked up an injury. So suddenly everybody was thinking, well, what the hell's going to happen next? Well, Tanaka had played against Norwich. He threw Tanaka and Joe Rothwell in beside him for an away game at Sunderland, which people might remember for the goalkeeping mistake by Ilan Meslier in the 95th minute or whatever it was. But actually, the big thing that came from that game was these two guys who'd been thrown into the middle of midfield together, who'd never played for the club before, hardly at all, just literally ran the game from start to finish. They did a lot of scurrying and ratting, not a lot of tackling, more just cleaning up, picking the ball up. And also there was a thing that Leeds had lacked for a while with the two of them, and that was progressive play. The passes, rather than being sideways a lot, you know, the fans had got rid or used to Glenn Kamara a little bit. Also Gruev, there was a lot of sideways passing, which in itself can be a precursor to progressive passing. But actually, this guy was actually knocking the ball forward every chance he got. And it was great to see it. So he played, 30-odd games after that and played a lot of football. And I don't know a Leeds United fan who isn't either sorry to see him go or wishing the guy well and thinking Rangers have got a hell of a deal here.
That's kind of what I picked up quite quickly was on X, the comments from Leeds fans saying basically what a player we've got and that he is going to be missed. I'm going to introduce Mitch, who's here with us. Mitch, how you doing?
I'm all good, mate. You?
Not too bad, lad.
Hi, Ross.
I'll jump to Ross then. Ross, just your initial reaction then when obviously the news broke that this was happening for Joe.
Yeah. Like what's been said there before, I guess. An unknown quantity, very much unknown from not being on my radar. Initial thoughts I did the quick Wikipedia search, as I'm sure we all did. I thought maybe a bit of a journeyman, a bit of a sort of another Todd Campbell or someone of that caliber, maybe a Dowell-esque signing, that it's going to be a in the sense that they've kind of played at that level, but probably never taken that step up. But then kind of reading deeper into it, he's won the league for the past 2 years, or got promoted, should we say, in the past 2 seasons. So he's obviously been brought in for a reason, right? And he's been brought in, obviously working with Russell Martin at Southampton before. I think for all parties, it makes sense. He's going into something now where he can win trophies. He's filling an area of our squad that we've lost out on recently, which is experience. And I think that really showed last season, and in the tough games, the experience to keep a calm head, a cool head, and see the game out or claw something back. I think we really missed that. And then obviously from there did the YouTube search, and God, I think I could look good on YouTube, but having a look at the style of player that he actually is, progressing the ball forward, either that's through him running the ball and breaking the lines, probably a saying that we'll hear quite a lot with Joe Rothwell, I think, is breaking the lines, or actually looking for that killer pass. And I think this is someone that will probably sit in that deep line midfield position and could either run with the ball himself and commit defenders, probably protecting the defense a little more, because it would probably be Suter who's been doing that recently for us. And also he has that ability to pick a pass and seems to be an accurate passer at getting the ball wide and creating those attacks quite dynamically from sort of back to front. So I think he's a versatile player, which is something that we've probably missed a bit. I think we've tried to put sort of round pegs in square holes with players like Diamonde and even when you look at Igaman, who's been playing out wide. But I think Martin's really trying now to create a clear identity and clear roles within the team of what each position is meant to do. That's what this is kind of calling out to me. But it's an exciting player and someone that I think is going to be adding much needed experience and kind of leadership skills on the pitch.
Mitch, just your thoughts on the signing?
I like Rothwell. I can't say I've storied watched 30 plus Leeds games last season, because I'd be lying to everyone's face at that point. I would never do that to a Ross. But I think the bits in the games that I have seen, like I've caught a couple of like the midweek games and the Monday night games and stuff. He's a really, really, really tidy player with the ball. Doesn't seem to get dispossessed very often, and everything he does with the ball, he seems to move with purpose. He doesn't just make a pass for a pass's sake. He makes a pass for a reason. And I think, Ross touched on it a minute ago, the last few years we've seen the likes of Lundstrom with forever sideways balls, and we've seen different varieties of players getting just shoved in to fit a system rather than a system to suit what we have available at the time. And I think Rothwell quite excites me in that level where he's got a decent engine in him. He's got probably a wee bit of underrated pace. I'm not saying that he's certainly no giving Roadrunner a run for his money or anything, but he's fast enough, especially for the Scottish League. And I think he'll probably thrive a lot in the big European games, especially when you're given that bit more element of respect on the ball. Then I think he will. I think domestically he's going to be absolutely fine. He'll do absolutely dandy. And as you say, he's one of these players that the eye test and the reaction from Leeds fans and the fans from other clubs where he's been at tells you everything I think that you need to know about a player before he comes. When fans are disappointed not to have got a player, it tells you just how well they've done. It's like, I would probably say Leeds are feeling the same way right now about Rothwell that we are about Tierney, probably, where we go, we really, really wish that we had Tierney, but we know that he was out of budget. And Leeds right now are going, this man played a key component in getting us up. I do think his set pieces interest me quite a lot. Looking at a kind of scratching below that, because I think he's got a really, really good quality delivery, and the stats back that up there. What I do wonder then is that a bit of a clearer indication of the reduced role for the likes of Tav over the coming season to say, look, you don't need to take every corner, every throw in, every set piece, every free kick. There is someone else with equal, if not better, ability within the squad that can take it. And I think part of the reason that our free kicks and our set pieces have struggled, in my opinion, the last couple of years is teams domestically already know what we're going to do before we do it, because it's the same guy that's taken them for 10 years. Having somebody else on the ball that realistically it's a bit of a kind of Haribo Tanktastics, stick your hand in the bag and see what he's going to do next.
Yeah, I like that.
I am hungry, to be honest. I've not had my dinner.
Doug, our graphics guru here, has given us a couple of pages here that I'll throw up for us, and we'll get a sort of clear picture of Rothwell's history, his stats last season, and then we've got a great slide that shows a great comparison with what we've currently got in terms of the midfield. So just bear with me while I throw this up here. That's grand. Right, don't worry about me. So he's 30, and if you go from the bottom up to his last club, so obviously his last season's probably been one of his best seasons, as you can see there in terms of rating. Leeds United championship winning team, key integral part, as Craig said, of that winning the league whenever he eventually made it into the team. He's contracted at Bournemouth, but he's had stints there at Blackburn Rovers as well, and you see Oxford United, Barnsley, and Blackpool. So very much a championship player that has made the step up to the Premier League whenever he's been there with Bournemouth. Craig, is there anything from that you're taking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you've got to look at is that he's played a lot of games last year. It took a while to get into the team, and it was a little bit of luck in a sense that he got in, because I think if the Ampadu injury hadn't occurred and then the Gruev one, I suspect he probably would have been waiting for a bit longer. But he took that chance and very quickly became a fan favourite and a very, very key component in the team. Now, there were a couple of things that, with the progressive stuff and what have you, with everything, there's a bit of a downside as well. And he's probably not a player in an away game where you're going to be under pressure that you want in your central midfield. And I think Farke acknowledged that, where he used to play the more prosaic players, because the stats that Leeds had were much better when, for example, Gruev and Ampadu played away from home than Tanaka/Rothwell, or one or other in combination. So there's a lot there. On the set piece stuff as well, another thing I would say is, I don't think I've ever seen him use a set piece to actually have a shot. He's very much a provider, someone who provides and assists for others. He wouldn't take a penalty. And certainly the corners that were being drilled, well, not drilled in, they were beautifully floated in. It was actually a thing of beauty watching them land in the penalty area. But if you have a free kick 25 yards out, you're still going to need that guy potentially to try and bend it into the top corner. Unless it's a string to his bow that he has that we've never really had the opportunity to see. So I will go on, but I thought I would give one of the rest of you a chance.
You're asking
I blame Jock.
Ross, from this slide here, you can see obviously his career path. Is there anything you can take from that? I know Doug did say that there's a small error and that there should be 4 assists to his career for Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, but that being 30 and being born in 1995 is a very rude awakening to how old I actually am. But regardless of that, I think it probably calls out to you what sort of a role he's going to play, right? I think he's going to be one of the midfield double pivot. I don't think he'll be played further forward than that. I think that probably is showing here from, and you mentioned there, Craig. He's maybe not a goal scorer. He's not a sort of necessarily going to be pinging balls from the edge of the box and peppering a goal. But maybe that's something that he could work on, or as you said, he may already have that in the locker. I think, as I said, when I first saw that we were signing him, I think I did see him as maybe a bit of a classic kind of floating championship player who's been there and sort of played a number of times. But I think what you'll see is that over the past 2 seasons, he showed probably a level of consistency to his game in terms of getting those teams to the elite level, and a consistently elite level.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think Russell Martin will have identified and thought, right, this guy has really honed his trade. Maybe he's, gained that experience over time. Maybe he's kind of understood the limitations of his abilities, or doubled down on where he has the high quality elements. And he's sort of thought, okay, we've got a more rounded player we can bring in here who has experience in tough, competitive games, which obviously the Championship offers.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a bit of a grey area in terms of European experience, but I think we've got to face into that a lot of the team players that we're looking at probably won't have that realistically. So how do we take this player to the next level and use his expertise and qualities to shine in those environments as well? Look, if you told me that we were getting a 7.2 for every game player, you'd bite your hand off. I think we've been sort of dwindling around the 4 and 5 in our midfield for a lot of the season. So if that's what he can bring and that's what he's going to offer us, then it seems like a very shrewd piece of business.
If I could just add to what Ross has said there as well. He arrived at Leeds United not as, oh great, we've got Joe Rothwell, but as a player who probably was seen by fans as the replacement for Crescencio Somerville, who'd obviously been the Championship Player of the Year the season before. I think he probably started 2-0 down in terms of what the fans were expecting and where they wanted him. And he completely won everyone over. And he's a player that the experience, and you talk about the experience and what have you, and his age and the games he's played, he just kind of gets on with it. He's not one of those players who, given his age, is in the referee's face or is like, getting into spats with other players. He kind of lets the ball do the talking and do the work and lets his own play do that as well, which is actually a very, very likable quality in a football player. Sometimes you want somebody to get in the face of the opposition and stuff, but I'm sure we'll have players who'll do that. That's just not his thing.
Yeah.
Ross, you touched on, obviously maybe doesn't have the European experience, but I think we're going to have to face that way because Martin doesn't really have much European experience at manager level as well. So I think it is going to be sort of new territory for the coaching staff as well as us fans, with a coaching team that probably doesn't have that European sort of experience, really.
Yeah.
Mitch, looking at this, the amount of games he's played each season for each club, there's a hell of a lot of reliability there, something which there's plenty of our Rangers midfielders can't even get double figures season upon season.
It's quite a trait, isn't
it? Yeah. Do you think that'll play in our favour?
I think one of the biggest things is this signifies the move to more athletic and robust players. And this is something I know, Jock, you and I have spoke about before. Obviously, under a Russell Martin team, you have to be fitter than a butcher's dog to play in his team. And I think, having that durability and that overall consistent reliability, sometimes the best ability somebody can have is availability. And I think, as you say, looking at that, minus that 23-24 season, in recent seasons he's not played under what, 25 games a season as a rolling average. As you say, there are many, many, many players on our team who it'd be nice if we could get 25 minutes a season out of, let alone 25 games out of. And I think, especially when you start to look the clock back at even like the Blackburn Rovers years and the Bournemouth years, obviously that 23 season that we're speaking about there, Bournemouth had started moving into that takeover era where they were starting to bring in the better quality players, and let's be honest, I'll call a spade, the sexier names than Joe Rothwell, to the Premier League. No offence, I'm sure Joe's stunning, but no with that haircut. He's looking like he's modelling the Ross Graham over there. But genuinely, I think, honestly, I think he was a wee bit of a victim of his own success getting the move to Bournemouth from Blackburn. And if he put hindsight in his own vision, that at the end of the 23 season, he probably would have made a permanent move somewhere else. But again, it's the age-old problem of he's on guaranteed money for guaranteed years, but he didn't mess about though. As soon as the first opportunity to go out to Southampton, the man's won back-to-back promotions in the Championship, which is at that top end of the Championship is that's a mini league in its own. It's probably one of the toughest leagues to break out of because everybody in that top 10, realistically, can take points off each other on any given day and move positions so quickly. We've seen it last year with how Norwich spent most of the season in the playoffs, and then in the final 3-4 games, a couple of draws here, a couple of draws there, they ended up mid-table when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
And I think for a man to have played a hand in back-to-back promotions says everything for me.
Yeah.
There was actually a stat last year that I think with about 4 games to go in the Championship, every team in the league could either be promoted or relegated. They all had a chance of one or the other, which backs Mitch's point that, the level of competitiveness in that league and the chances when you go away to a team in 17th or 18th and could take an absolute hammering like Leeds did in the season they didn't go up when they went to QPR and lost 4-0 with 5 games to go, shows that, it's a tough league and a tough league to play in. So he's played 36 league games last year by my calculation, because the 39 will probably be the 3 cup games that Leeds played. And he missed probably the first 6 league games. So he's played practically everything from then on. And that was a hard team to get into as well. That was a team that was running on rails. And it's hard to underestimate that. He did a very, very good job last year.
Well, that brings me on to our next slide, which is last year's breakdown. So you can see it was on loan at Leeds. He had 39 matches played. He had 4 assists. And we're going to dig down into his pros and cons. If I can just move the banner away from the bottom. Yeah.
Also, for anyone who felt I looked distracted for the last 10 minutes, I was grabbing the Wayne's tickets for the Bruges game at the weekend. I'm like, it's one of these. We got an extra addition to come with us, and I was like, well, I better go and get them now then.
At least you get sorted. Ross, I'll come to you then. Biggest one that jumps out for me, obviously, is the 91% pass accuracy. It's something that, obviously, a Rangers team that's going to see majority, if not most of the ball, is going to be craving. Somebody in the team that can pass consistently like that.
Yeah. For me, the one that jumps out to me is that he's in the 96th percentile of chances created. And that's in a league where there's a lot of goals for, conceded and scored. So to be in the 96th percentile within that league of chances created, and it's 61, that is some going. I mean, that's not an easy feat. We just need someone up top to put him away, but it's an incredible stat. He's obviously on the ball a lot, right? And as you'd expect, like I'm trying to think like a Rodri maybe, who's in that middle constantly, especially in like a sort of Martin mid sort of style, getting the ball, passing it. Probably, as you say, 91% suggests that they're not all 30-yard pingers, but they're sort of 5-6 yard give and goes, or just rescues or safe passes. But to be able to then create 61 chances is a really, really strong stat to have under his belt. I think that's a really exciting thing to have in the locker. The obviously not scoring last year is I wouldn't say it's a worry, but I think a trademark of Martin's team is that he wants goals to come around the team from wide and down the middle as well. So but potentially he's not being brought in for that, and potentially he wants to free up your Diamonde to play in a more advanced role. And we know that Diamonde, a lot of the fan base believe that Diamonde's had shackles on him and been unable to play that role. So maybe he sees this as the perfect kind of match made in heaven to allow him to move that ball forward. I think some of the pros that call out big game mentality, we for me, that doesn't just mean an old firm or a European game. It means the hard to win, the sort of Dingwalls where we've lost points, or St Mirrens or whatever, being able to have a mental strength and fortitude to be able to see those games out. And clearly, having played so much across that season, would suggest that he's got that ability to do. And listening to his interview was really insightful. Not sure if you'll come on to that, but there were some really interesting things that came out about it. And he says when he was asked what the kind of key things are that he can bring, he said his first word was experience. And that is a really great thing that he recognized in himself. And obviously Martin recognizes too. So bring that into a sort of unsettled team and a team that's going to be chopping and changing a lot is great. You know, we've been crying out for leaders. And if he can come in and fill that role, not just from on the pitch point of view, but a mentality, a leadership, a figurehead, you know, whatever you want to call it on the pitch, that itself could be worth his wages, you know?
Yeah, I agree. There's something that can't just always be the same one or two players in the team that sort of drives everybody on. There has to be more demanding, more from each other. Mitch, your thoughts?
Do you know, there's something I just wanted to pick up on there, and I excuse me if it was touched on the first couple of minutes, but it was as Ross was talking there about obviously his appearances last season and stuff. Leeds were very much set up to score beautiful goals and almost perfect goals a lot of the time, and I think his role within that Leeds team was much more as an instigator and a driver, much like you're my instigator, Ross. But genuinely, like, our role wasn't so much to be box to box and free roaming, and to go and start putting goals away. It was a wee bit more to be. It was designed to be a bit more like that driver within the team. And I actually think, in a lot of ways, if he plays in at a 6, for example, it frees Nico and Diamande up. Diamande thrives best out in the left-hand side of midfield, and I think having Rothwell there to be the supportive engine behind that, they're spraying in nice balls to him, I think that's going to suit him really, really nicely. And I think it lets Nico work on his end product as well, which lets him, I think, in my opinion, probably become a bit more of a complete player than what he is right now. I think he's probably 85% of a complete player at the moment, with that end product as his growth area. And I think having the experience of Rothwell beside him allows him to do that and kind of mature himself. Whereas I think when you look at the trio of Diamande, Raskin and Barron that we had quite a lot last season, there was a hint of experience leading a lot of inexperience together in terms of the age and what they've seen in football to that point. And I think Rothwell's obviously played in Wembley. He's played Wembley Stadium. You know, that way it says a lot about his character and where he's been.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing for me with Rothwell is, you know, I'm looking at the cons list and it says obviously little sell-on value. Not every player we buy over the course of this summer needs to have sell-on value. If we make the purchases of the younger players that come in the right purchases, sometimes the biggest value is bringing in not an older player, because I genuinely feel like calling a 30-year-old, as somebody who is 34, calling a 30-year-old an older player is beyond disrespectful, because he's in the peak of his career right now. I think sometimes you have to have, you have to have investment players that you spend a little bit of money on, because he's going to improve the younger players around him, where that money gets paid back tenfold down the road.
Craig, you've obviously seen him in the flesh and plenty of games last season. Do you think he's got what it takes to play in this league?
Well, this is what I was going to come on to, and I'm glad you've asked me that, Ross, because a lot of what Mitch has just said about him was actually pretty accurate in terms of him being essentially a driving force, a guy who has a good engine but it is, and as Ross said as well, it's those little balls. But if you play a pass to one of your teammates, that's always a good pass. Do you know what I mean? As long as it's got there and they're in space and they can pick it up. A lot of where he picked the ball up would have been just behind or just in front of the centre circle. And it would have been the case of either driving on, running with the ball before he knocked it forward, or to actually knock the ball forward to those little passes. Now, Leeds were victims of their own success to a certain extent last year, when teams would come and set up in a very blatant low block against them. And it was like, come on, here we are, come and break us down. I remember Plymouth turning up last year and not having a shot, not even a shot on target, no shots. And that happened a few times where literally these teams they were playing against was so deep. And he loved that. That was his game. It was the actual, almost like the chess piece of trying to find that little way through, that knocking it through. And I think there's one game that Leeds United fans will always remember Joe Rothwell for, and that's the game against Sunderland at the end of last season, a Monday night game live on Sky, which you may have been able to see, guys. And he didn't start. Farke decided to play Gruev instead and went for the slightly more conservative option. Sunderland scored midway through the first half and literally retreated to the edge of their box. I don't think the ball left their own half for the next 70 minutes or whatever it was, that until Rothwell came on and very much changed the game, because suddenly it was a game that totally suited what he loved to do. He's got players there who are going deep, and he's going to knock that little ball past them. 2 assists and 2 Pascal Struijk goals later. Leeds had turned the game. But a lot of people will say that game was Joe Rothwell's game because he was the man who really, really changed it up. And I think in the SPFL, maybe 30 of our games next season are going to be against teams that sit deep. I think he might have a field day in that respect.
It sounds to me, you're telling me that he is a square peg for a square hole.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe last year we had round pegs in those square holes because every team sat deep last year, and you'd watch game after game after game thinking, how are we going to break down Motherwell or St Mirren or whatever? And they were comfortable. You know, they almost allowed it to happen, and it didn't really look like anything good was going to happen. I think he might be able to make that if he's given that space and that time and just that opportunity to play in between the edge of the penalty box and the edge of the centre circle.
We'll move on then to the comparison and to compare him, obviously, last season. So basically you're taking this and replacing it against what we have currently. So that'll be Raskin and Diomande. So I think Doug's got this absolutely spot on, and it's so clear to see. If you look at it, Rothwell's the green, Raskin is the blue, and Diomande is the orange. So you can see clearly on the left-hand side, Raskin's the more defensive, the deeper line one. Diomande is the one sort of in the middle, does a bit of both, does go forward, does pick up from the back. But you can see Rothwell here, where he's leading in shot creation actions, he's leading in progressive passes, and he's leading in progressive carries, and he's sort of in the middle of successful tackles. So you can see what from this graph the type of player that he's going to be. He's going to be somebody that's going to win the ball in the midfield, and if not, turn quick to spray the ball out and start the moves. He's going to start running with the ball and carry, and then look to spray the ball and start things moving. I think, what do you guys think? I'll go to you, Mitch. What do you think first? I think this graph's great.
I think it shows there when you lay it all together, and for any viewers that are like colourblind, I'm sorry, you're probably looking like a Doug right now when you're looking at this. But I think it shows right now just how complementary all three would be beside each other. Where you've got let Raskin go and get his elbows out, go and do the dirty bits that he likes to go and do, get in the hustle and bustle, and then he knows that he's got 2 steam trains right beside him that he can simply say, "You go and take it, go and do something with it." I'll spend my time floating between the centre circle and the back line, and I'll go and keep fishing that ball out time and time again. But you two better have your backsides in gear, getting further up the pitch and dragging everybody else with you. And from the games that I have watched with Rothwell last season, he's a very vocal player on the pitch. He will tell his teammates where he wants them to move to. And if they are not moving there quick enough, he's not shy in telling them that they're not moving their backside quick enough. And I think once or twice there, obviously, a few players will take a clout round the ears from him before he puts a foot up their backside. And I think that's good for the younger players on our team right now. I would say when you look at like Oscar Cortez, for example, who will need that on-field leadership that, not to harken his name again, but Tavernier can't give him that, obviously, from a right-back position when he's playing in the left wing. If he's got a player in beside him, 10, 15 feet beside him, barking instruction and barking almost positional awareness to him of, I will help your inexperience with my experience, but the way this is going to work is if you go where I ask you to go, and then once you get a couple of decent runs out of it, the likes of Cortez goes, actually, when he tells me to move here, good things happen, and if I don't do it that way, then I lose the ball, or we concede a corner, we concede something from it. I think that shows that how that can quite easily work together, and it also shows that if one of the three stays back, you've got another two that can power forward as well. So each one of them, less likely, I'd least like to see Diamande in the six, but you can pretty much put any variation of the three in the three positions. But I'll just kid on that, Ross, I know you love Diamande anyway, and I know you'd love to see him anywhere in the pitch. But genuinely does show you that you can put them in any part of that midfield together, and you can, in your head, you've got a clear idea of how that would look and present itself on the field. One of the other wee bits I'd actually forgot to mention earlier, and was with the Sunderland squad and the Leeds squad that Rothwell's came from. Rothwell's experience, even at Premier League level with Bournemouth, has been involved in squads with high turnovers of players in the last couple of years. And I think that's something that is probably quite an underrated quality at the moment, given that we know that bodies in versus bodies out is going to be potentially heading into double figures, the way that if we're moving at the pace that we're moving right now.
Yeah.
Having players like him, Max Aarons, players who have seen this at a top level, they know how to operate and how to help other players like them that have come in. They know how to make sure they bed in quickly, and they also know how to bed themselves into clubs quickly. And I think that's quite important for, the rumours of the 23-year-old Norwegian winger from Luton there. If a player like him comes in after 6 months down in Luton, that's, it can be topsy-turvy for a player that's that young. Whereas if he's got a couple of experienced folk like, your Souters, your Rothwells, your Raskins and stuff, people to put a wee arm around them and say, right, look, we're going to go paintballing or whatever, like, cue, generic team building exercise 500, like, but players like that are going to help them settle quickly so that they don't feel I'm the new guy in town, so that within a couple of weeks, actually, you see them in the training ground videos mucking about with the guy next to them in the changing room and stuff. Not in that way, Ross, before you start smirking.
Ross, Paul's asked a question here, and I think it's quite interesting considering obviously Cameron was pre-contract announced away in January, probably a Coppin signing. Do you think, look at Paul's question there, do you think Cameron will be used in the same midfield with Rothwell and Raskin?
I think it's the most natural sort of Diamande sort of replica that we'd have,
Balance.
Cameron was involved with a lot of the good things that were happening last year, and in terms of his output, it does seem to be further up the pitch. I guess they'll have to learn and adapt their game. I think each one of them, you can see they need to work on certain areas. I guess the only risk with that is you start getting an injury to someone who's high at shot creation, as an example, and where does that come from? So obviously depth and versatility is something that maybe we'll need to have a look at, and potentially, you start then looking at your Barons and your Camerons. But I think Cameron will definitely be slightly more advanced in his role, and potentially someone that could play off one of the wings as well, and provide a bit more sort of forward impetus. You're right in saying about Diamande, and I won't go on a Diamande rant. I do think in terms of the breadth of his upper percentile comparison there, I do think he probably has the most to work on, I'd say, in terms of his actual output. And I think you see that in games. I think you could actually get a sense of his output. And I do think that is something as a young player that he will be worked on, and potentially, instead of trying to be a jack of all trades, Martin, as I mentioned earlier, will clearly identify the roles and give a remit of what he wants them to do. Yes, you make an interception if the ball's 2 yards away from you, but your primary task within the squad or in the team is to get forward, get beyond, or in Rothwell's case, sit back and sort of watch the play in front of you and understand the movement of the defenders and the runs from our players. So I think that'll come out from this. I think as well, doesn't he look magnificent in the shirt? He really does suit that, doesn't he?
I thought
He
that
looks
today,
bloody
actually,
good.
yeah.
He looks bloody good.
Baywatch for women.
He looks smart. He looks really smart. So look, I'm excited to see the guy. I think he will complement what we've got. I do think that there is room for probably a foot, because you've got to remember we've lost Hadji. No, he didn't play all the time, but we've lost Hadji. We lost Lawrence in there. Obviously, Dowell maybe is that auxiliary player that can sort of play as a jack of all trades and maybe be that supplementary player if there's an injury or to sort of freshen things up. Maybe. Obviously, Jose Cifuentes is on the books as well. I don't think any of us probably know what Cifuentes' best position is or how you could get the best out of him, or whether he'll be in a royal blue shirt next season. But he's got options, and Rothwell seems to have clearly, and credit to Doug for this chart, clearly come in and fill an area of our team where we haven't had that level of quality in those certain criteria.
Yeah. Craig, have you seen any of the training footage that they've been releasing at the moment?
No, I haven't now. But I did see some. In fact, I was going to try and watch that earlier on because it was on the site and or on the WhatsApp group that it came up and stuff. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear what that is.
Basically, what I'm taking from it and what you can hear them discussing in the background is talking about the press, and you can see it in some of the drills they're doing about the players having to turn quickly, and the drills that they're doing, it's the players attacking clusters of players who have the ball and have to try and move the ball between themselves and move it out to get the ball moved and to start attacks, or obviously win the ball back from the opposition team.
Yeah.
Does Rothwell fit that type of build, that he's going to be that aggressive sort of midfielder where he will chase after the ball, or do you think that will that be Martin's philosophy and it'll be the team will chase, the team will press?
He played very much in a very rigid 4-4-2 last season. Okay. And so he played with us, I've mentioned the three players who he played with, and all of them had duties to do both sides, and so of those four that were there, he was probably the least accomplished defensively, but that didn't mean that he couldn't do it. And when I look at this, you think to yourself, could we play next season with three in midfield, with him being the one just a bit further forward, with the other two bursting forward from behind him now and again when it happens? He's quite capable of dropping and sitting when he needs to and give them that opportunity. But I think the real thing here could be that actually, if he did get to play in a three, it might protect him that little bit more to actually use the ball even more in those forward positions. And, we could get something really good out of him. Just looking at those stats today, sometimes you watch football and you think your mind might be playing tricks on you when you actually see statistics. As soon as I saw those, I thought, yeah, that kind of accords with how I see those football players and how I see their game and how they play. That Rothwell has a lot more in the progressive sense. The other two can do that, but that's not their natural game to the extent it's his. And they're more defensive than he is, but he can still do it. And I think you've got three players here who could do a wee bit of everything. It's just about making sure that you've got them in that right system and that right way.
I think you're right, and that's something we touched about that with Dio last year. I don't think he's been played in the right way. Go ahead, Ross, if you want to speak.
Yeah, we've got breaking news. We've signed another player.
Oh, right, okay.
What?
So we have signed Emmanuel Fernandez. We will do a pod on this. Right. But it's just been released there. He'll wear the number 37. Emmanuel Fernandez. We'll do our best to get some information out about him. But again, go ahead.
If he's wearing 37, Ross, that means he fancies himself as a 10, doesn't it?
It has to be. It's either that or he's either wearing that or
isn't that how it works?
Or 99 as a striker, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do some digging in the background here, lads. But yes, another one in the door, another silent one. So
There you go.
yeah,
Breaking
Look at
news.
us.
Yeah.
Signing 6
Asset
players.
strippers.
That's it. It's unheard of. And we were all panicking. We were all absolutely panicking a week ago where there was nothing happening. And then July 2nd, and we've got, what, 3 in the door?
I've tried to be a voice of calm in that, and the keep believing mantra has kept going. But I was starting to get a bit worried as well. But they tend to just come through. Players just appear. It's like the next thing you know, you've had 10 and you haven't even noticed, which is quite a good way to do it, really.
4-year deal he signed.
4-year deal,
So
okay.
that's encouraging from Peterborough.
Yes.
The centre back from Peterborough. I was just going to say there, Craig, for those that haven't seen your proper debut, which you did with David and Scotty the other day, you did call out in it that this is a way that the 49ers do their business.
Yeah.
Don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, Leeds United did another one yesterday, didn't they? Where a guy today, I think it was, where somebody just appeared from nowhere again. And it's like, it's that. But the chap who appeared yesterday from Werder Bremen, I think, or Wolfsburg, I think it's Wolfsburg, actually. He did an interview and said that they'd been in contact with him up to 6 months ago. So all these things have been bubbling under for a hell of a long time. And I know, like as fans, we expect to be sat in the loud and them coming out every 2 hours telling us how the negotiations go and whether or not it's getting any closer and stuff. But actually, they keep their cards close to their chest. And I don't think they're worried by the noise in any way, shape or form. I think the fans can shout all they want. They've got a plan. They'll execute it. And it's worked pretty well so far where they've been. 49ers were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago as well. So, sporting-wise, everything they've touched so far has turned to gold. So hopefully they can do the same here.
I think we have to look at the profile of player that we're going for here as well. Mitch Curry asked a question here earlier, and I started just for towards the end of the podcast, but obviously now that we're getting hijacked with new transfers. He's asking the players we brought in and the players that we're linked with, are they for beating the teams that we struggled to beat last season, or is it for more European clubs? Or I'll throw in there, is it just players to win games overall?
I think it's a two things can be true situation. Being honest with Fernandez, I think Fernandez will likely I can see him being more of a squad option, but probably more likely it may even take a loan at from now to January, because he is relatively inexperienced. Based on obviously what we've kind of worked on in the background at the moment. I would say he's probably one that will take on maybe the Enciala role from last season, with Enciala essentially graduating to the first team, with likely Ben Davis and most likely Robin Proper departing obviously in the summer. Let's be honest, nobody's going to be shocked by that. It still probably leaves us one light at the back, in my opinion. But I think the players that we're being linked with and the players that we're now actively bringing in, fair old busy week. I think these are players that make us athletically better. They make us physically more robust as a team, so we are much more suited to 3 games in a week when we get to those busy weeks where we have where we've got 5 games in the space of 14 days. We are probably signing players of a much better quality and quantity than what we've had before. When you look at the players like Hadji and Lawrence, not to pick anybody out in particular, but just using them as an example, you look at Lawrence's availability over 2 seasons versus his wage output. Wages versus availability, that's a loss-making deal. Even if you said that we wanted to keep him to the end of the contract and he played week in, week out, we would have had a return on that investment from on-pitch performance. Yeah. But Tom Lawrence has cost us and doctors' fees. Okay, the insurance would have paid us through for his wages and stuff, so I'm not going to hark on about them. But you say, he's constantly taking up a space in the squad that realistically his body didn't allow him to do. And it's through no fault of his own. That injury that he took right at the beginning changed his body as a player. And I will always preface that because I still think that at the time Tom Lawrence was probably the best natural hitter of a football we had within the team. The problem was all the ability, but his body just after that injury, his body wasn't right again. So for me, I think Max Aarons, again, even last season, he was available for the bulk of last season. People are harking on about, the injury and the hammy, and but he had 2 injuries in the same season. He came back probably a bit too soon after he'd done the hamstring, and he wasn't back on the shelf for an obscene amount of time. He was back on the shelf for, I think it was roughly about 6 weeks, and it's because essentially I think he tweaked it a little bit just by playing too often and try to play through the pain and grit your teeth a wee bit.
Yeah.
I think this is the difference in the profile of player that we're bringing in. They've got that bit more grit, and they're not afraid as well either to bite to kind of bite down on the gum shield when they need to. When we get to over that festive period, leading into the traditionally sticky festive period to up to the end of February, where the games are coming quicker than we know what to do with.
Yeah.
When we're all wandering about like a fart in a trance between Christmas and New Year, not knowing what day of the week it is. These boys don't know what when they're going for their next meal or whether they're going for their next game. I think that makes me much more comfortable with this squad, seeing the player coming in and seeing the players that are coming into the squad and the profile and the general fitness, even from the training videos. Russell Martin is working these players in a way that I don't think many of them have been worked in the last 18 months to 2 years. He is working them like dogs.
I think Danilo was in that camp. You could see that. Mitch, there's a wee slide here. So this is Emmanuel Fernandez. I'll just get rid of this banner again just for now, just so you see it a bit clearer. Something quick that we've got here. Ross, do you want to just touch on it there for us?
Sure thing. Yeah. I mean, look, there had been a few links or whispers. I think we'll probably get thousands of those throughout the summer. And I did do a little bit of research on the guy before. I think that the things that come out from it is that he's extremely quick and aggressive. And the way that Peterborough try to play is a progressive pass-out style football, which is obviously akin to Russell Martin's philosophy. Really tall guy, right-footed, tends to play as the right of the 2 centre-backs. So maybe does that say something about the stability or resilience of Suter? Maybe. I was also just briefly reading there about his intro statement. So a couple of interesting things I think worth calling out. So from Russell Martin, Emmanuel is a young defender with a huge amount of potential, and I'm excited to welcome him to the club. He has a strong physical presence, a commanding defender, and I believe this environment we can help him develop and provide him with the opportunities to take his game to the next level. Similar sort of rhetoric from Thelwell. I'm delighted Emmanuel has joined the club. He is a really promising young defender, and we hope to have a big future at this club. We have been impressed with his development and journey from non-league football to League One. And there's a few more bits on there, but I do think this is a buy for the future sort of player. So that will happen, right? We're still player trading. We're still looking at youth and talent and potential sell-on value. I think you can see from this that he's scored a few goals, 97th percentile for goals in League One as a defender. Where have we been? The amount of corners that we take and don't get a ball in the back of the net from. So that's really encouraging. And also a couple of red cards and yellow cards in there. So he's obviously not afraid to put the foot in.
Fine.
Unknown quantity, but let's see what happens.
I must say, I spotted one of his red cards from last season, and it was possibly one of the most howling disgraces of a red card I've ever seen. Like, no fault of Fernandez. The referee's given what can only be probably one of the softest reds I have ever seen. He's went through, he's taken the ball cleanly, but the him and the striker banged shins, and he took a red card for it.
So he's going to fit up here in Scotland then, basically.
Well, that's it. When he's got some 6'9" Bulgarian that's been signed by St Mirren from somewhere, like, we'll just send Manny out here to go and batter him for the full game. But I do think, on a sensible note, I think genuinely we're going to see him maybe take that Enciala squad role from last year with Enciala graduating, with having half an eye on the fact that Souttar's in the final year of his contract at the moment as well.
Yeah.
And at the moment, all talks about, again, this could be very much 49er territory. All the murmurs and chat about his contract extension seems to have gone relatively quiet. So, knowing the 49ers, we're probably going to announce a new 10-year deal tomorrow with him. But equally, they could also be finding, I did see that he was out training in Turkey with, some alumni while he was out there. Ross, you better not put him in your suitcase on the way back. But could he be potentially finding new employment over the summer himself? And is this why we're maybe getting Fernandes plus maybe Conor Cody, for argument's sake? Could it be that we are, in fact, just going to gut the back line out and say, well, I'll tell you what, if you're not signing the new contract, adios?
Craig, just your final thoughts then on Emmanuel Fernandes. I've just seen here, he's won 8% of his aerial duels. So he seems to be a bit of a beast in the air, which is something I think we're all crying out for.
Yeah. I think defensively, that was where I think most people were tearing their hair out. I know people have their views on Cyril Dessers, but he, at the back, I think was that idea that we needed 20 chances to score and other teams needed 1. And I think at Leeds, they built from the back and they solidified the back 4 and put something in front of it as well. And I think that's probably what they've got in mind. There'll be people working out strategies who have been poring over SPFL games for the last 6 months, working out the type of player, the model, the fit for this type of league. And if he's a big guy who doesn't mind the tackle and is prepared to get booked or sent off, then with a lot of potential as well. Also with Russell Martin, who seems to have a very paternalistic approach to management, I think that it could work out really well, but I know nothing about him. I can't say I've ever seen the lad play football, but it's another player, isn't it? Another shiny new toy for us all, and maybe another 2 tomorrow.
Ross Graham's going to love him because he's a big strapping man. We all know that Ross loves a big strapping man at the back.
I was going to just say on the end of what you said there, Craig, we've never seen him play football, but we know he's amazing. And he's going to win the league. So there you go.
Yeah.
Ballon d'Or 2029.
One thing to finish. Oh, sorry. One thing to finish off, though, because the guy I have seen play football is definitely a massive upgrade on Tom Lawrence, who I know had a lot of ability, but I think he's more of a dependable Todd Cantwell, shall we say, in terms of the way he moves the ball and the opportunities he's got. But I honestly think he has been bought with those games we lost last year in mind, that ability to get behind a team that's just sat in front of us thinking, right, come on, try and break us down. And actually, it just might give us another string to the bow. I hope that's where we see his value, and I hope that's where we get it, because I think we'd all like to win the league next year more than anything else.
You're absolutely right, Craig. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll wrap it up here. I'll do a quick shout out to our pod sponsor, which is Off to the Match I Go. As you see in the ticker below, if you go to the website, Journal 10 as your coupon code, you'll get 10% off. Mitch, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Handsome.
Ross, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Jock. It's been a pleasure. Mitch, you big flirt. Keep it in your pants, lad.
And Craig,
I'll not.
Craig, it was good to meet you, and thanks for joining us tonight.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, guys. Just leaves me just to say that, as usual, every night's a Rangers Journal night.